Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Inforunners podcast. And today we're going to be following up our last top five list, and we're going to be talking about capital ships instead of entry level ships. I'm Dazan was here.
And this is Hayes. And as we said, we're giving you our top five of the capital ship picks. And we're basing our judgments based on a value for money, the versatility in like any role. We're just doing ships that sort of go above and beyond what their initial sort of role would be.
Yes, all these ships are exceptional in their role, and they also are really some of the best value for not just groups, but in some cases, individual players. So, opening up with our list, as you can see right now, we actually are starting with number five. Yes, number five being the Carrack, which is one of my personal favorite ships.
Well, when you think about the Carrack, it is really a jack of all trade ships. Like it is not only like the premier exploration vessel for a person or a small group of players, it is also a little bit of everything. And so where you get things like the Cutlass may be a pocket knife, you may get the Caterpillar being a Swiss Army knife, and then the Carrack is like the Leatherman. It's got all your tools, it's always there with you. It's
Mhm.
good, all reliable.
Oh, and it is modular, and that's another nice thing. You not only can you do some of these other roles, but some of these modules are downright useful. My favorite being the fact that it looks like if they keep with what CIG has said about med bays and everything like that, you should be able to spawn in to the ship and in theory maybe spawn friends that weren't necessarily there onto that ship. And that just is an amazing concept right there. Let alone having a rover and, of course, your nice little exploration ship. And it's not just useful for exploration and all the other stuff we talked about, but is going to be integral in fleet convoys for helping scout and even in military operations as an extra set of eyes and ears that is also well defended because it's the best turret locations of any ship currently in the game.
This is right. This makes an excellent sort of Lego piece to any sort of an escort fleet, giving very long sensor ranges, forward scouts. It does search and rescue for like any downed pilots. It can then pick it up. It is also exceptionally good just as a regular sort of defense unit. So like when it's not scouting, if something actually hits the fan, you're getting attacked, the carrot can actually fight back. And so it's a very well all-rounder when it comes to any sort of a military scouting or even combat role. Yeah.
Well, the other thing for me is it also is very reminiscent of Firefly. It has some of that aesthetics to it, so I just love it just for that. I mean,
Well, the other thing is being very modular. They have all these modular bays. Whilst they haven't exactly told us what they do precisely, the idea is that it's sort of like the caterpillar having many different modules, being able to do many different sort of special roles that other ships that are less modular wouldn't be able to do. And with a very handsome cargo capacity, this can also do light trading.
yes. So that all being said, this is our number five pick, and a lot of people say, "Well, why isn't it higher up on the list?" Well, sadly, the next several ships really just blow this out of the water with everything that they do. So now we're going to open up with our next vessel, which is the Hull series. The Hull series is one of my favorite selection of ships, not only because they are massive income ships, being as you can earn a lot of money hauling stuff, but they're massive fleet support ships with all the different things that CIG has said that these ships will do. So it's the Hull E and D. Really the Hull E, but the Hull D really does get an honorable mention here.
Well, when you talk about it, the whole D and E are like two peas in a pod. You either use one or the other based on how large your operation really is. So it's a matter of scaling more than, picking one ship or the other. You either have the capacity to use a whole D, or if you've got that big of an operation going on, the whole E, you just change over rather easily. And these things are incredibly modular. These are supposed to be some of the most modular ships ever, going from anything from a full-time refueler, like sort of, makes the Starfarer blush, to logistics space resupply, whether you're doing mining, reclamation, or doing a trade cargo or a military that needs resupply. The Hull series is the ship if you're a large enough of a force.
Well, and also in theory, they mentioned that you might be able to put snubs on some of those little wings, and that just also adds extra versatility to it. Because just imagine having a couple of snub fighters just sitting there. Or my favorite idea, everyone's saying, "Oh, it's cargo, it's versatility here." I'm like, this ship has two big potentials that a lot of people aren't looking at. First one being, once it's collapsed down, the hull E will make a in theory great gunship. Good because it should be fast in one direction, not in others, when collapsed down, and it has great guns. Holy mackerel! Just look at the guns on this and the turret locations when it's collapsed down. Just look at it.
Well, you got to think about it. When it's collapsed down, it's actually like a much smaller ship, only it has a shield class that should be like large capital Idris size shielding and power reactors, and the guns are actually half decent. There's no reason you can say, well, forgo all cargo and take this around as an escort fleet. Um, Even if it's just one way and then you pick up cargo for the way back. At the end of the day, this does have considerable amount of firepower, and the turret coverage is really good once you got rid of the spindles.
Well, all it takes is CIG not just going, well, we're going to limit its speed to it being a big, hulking, slow ship without its cargo, because the thrust ratio to weight and mass is, well, I know I say that weird, but the thrust to mass ratio in this case is not bad. It's actually amazing. So it should be fast.
Though they have talked about like all the ships at the moment are flying as if they're fully laden with cargo, and that eventually they will take cargo into account as actual weight actually affecting speed. So, ships like the Starfarer, while are very slow and hulking at the moment, are not supposed to be that way when they're not actually having any cargo.
Well, it just makes me sit there and think, well, what about the Freelancer, Cutlass, and Connie? How well will those handle when they're not laden with cargo?
Mm. Well, and if those are suddenly faster maneuverable ships, more so than they already are at the moment, it starts to rethink what those ships are and what they can do.
It really does. And now, moving on to our next set of mentions is another cargo-centric ship, but it is definitely not a entirely cargo role. And the Banu Merchantman.
So, like the Banu Merchantman, yes, it's a cargo ship, but no, it's not a cargo ship primarily. It is more like it has guns, it has speed, it has entirely internal cargo. I mean, as soon as you start taking cargo onto this suddenly becomes a militia escort fleet. And that is useful in every way, just like the Carrack is, because it can go, it has the long range, it has the stopping power, it becomes a decent military asset. And then let's take it back to the Carrack again. Why can't you use this for exploration? The amount of cargo it has should easily be able to take land vehicles. It should easily be able to upgrade as a large capital ship its sensor array in order to do exploration. There's no reason you couldn't land this on a planet and take out mining-based equipment, do a ton of mining, and voila, it's got the cargo to take that mining back with you. At the end of the day, there's nothing stopping this from doing salvage either.
Well, let's just go
This,
back to the previous video we did on the Banu Merchantman, strictly on it, and when we look at the gun size. In theory, we're looking at minimum a size 6 or 7 gun on this thing. And that right there packs enough of a punch that I don't see why you wouldn't even add this into an attack fleet just as a forward attack wing that hits with its forward-facing weapons and gets out. Or for dangerous space, this is the best ship to own because you and me, we just want to do something quick, we can toss into it. A hull you have to plan.
and this is not a 100-meter ship anymore. This is now a Banyan capital, 150 meters confirmed. This is a very interesting ship, and thanks to the thing with ships with large cargo capacity, but then are also really good at other things. Let's say speed, weapons, That implies modularity and capacity to go and do things, either solo or as a group. Cargo and modularity seem to be very much aligned with each other as to, you know, what you can actually get out of these ships. And this is a primary example where this does everything, but yet is primarily a cargo hauler.
Yes.
Bit too good to be true, to be honest.
Well, it is a bit too good to be true, and just toss this into the speculation that they're trying to fit some sort of cargo base, so you can toss a Banu Defender in and use that as a launch platform. And they're saying they're working on that, and you're like, holy mackerel! Like, why do I want a Polaris when I have something cheaper that does all this? There's reasons, but this ship is hands down the best value for price of any of the ships, and the only reason it didn't take number one are the two ships that are above it just are so much better at their specific roles and their necessary specific roles that we had to pick them. And that
Speaking of the ship above this one,
the Polaris is my favorite ship in my fleet, just have to say.
the Polaris is, you say, okay, it's a one-trick pony. It only kills things. It's only military. But you have to understand, when this ship was sold, the majority of people who bought this, they saw one thing. They saw a ship that was going to be the backbone of any industry-based organization, sort of operation, any sort of escort mission, any sort of if you needed escort and force projection for any sort of situation, this was the ship. There is no other ships below this ship that is capable of escorting capitals, bringing tactical gameplay, being able to give light support, and being able to give that level of force projection. There's no competition here.
Well, and the thing is, the big thing is, like, you have your Idris, you have your Javelin. The biggest limiter for that is operating cost and manpower required. This ship hits that sweet spot with, again, this is just speculation. It's smaller size, operating cost. I know it's a lot of torpedoes, but in most cases, your biggest offense is your just pure theoretical firepower, not actually what you bring to the table in the actual battle, because most people are going to look at it and go, well, I can't win that, or I can definitely win this.
And I know people can say, well, you don't need a Polaris to go out mining in my Orion or go out with my Reclaimer. Well, if Star Citizen is going to be that game where risk is stacked against reward, better rewards for the more risk, then why wouldn't you bring a Polaris out every time you take out your Orion and Reclaimer and go into those more dangerous areas? Any sort of larger operation that requires multiple capital ships, need a proper escort, this is the ship to pick. It's not like, oh, can we get enough like fighters to come along and escort us? It's no like, who has a Polaris? Where is the damn Polaris? We need a Polaris. And this is the only ship, and a beautifully crafted ship at that, that is perfect at supporting like a small scout, like a Terrapin or a Hornet Tracker, or maybe 2 or 3 fighters. It brings everything with it, including the kitchen sink. This is a premier support ship that can be slotted into any operation that would be earning money.
Yes, and again, that's the ideal thing, because and the reason you don't see again the Idris and Javelin is not just operating costs, but it's also that's a lot of overkill for most operations.
They're not very versatile ships either, like in comparison to the Polaris, because of those limiting factors.
Yes, so Polaris is right there, and now you're probably guessing there's plenty of ships out there. What did we pick for our top slot here? What did we pick for the top slot? And well, it goes down to probably the most versatile ship in the game, and that is the Endeavor. And this ship has it all. Literally has it all.
Well, if you think of the Carrack as the Leatherman, then the Endeavor is like the sonic screwdriver of the verse. You know, is Doctor Who's, it's broken. It not only does a number of its things better than everything else that any other ship can do, like with science, with medical, with sort of exploration and sensors and telescopes. It also sort of drafts out into many other fields and does them just as well as many other ships. The capacity for cargo for this, just with the landing bay, let alone if they allow you to attach cargo blocks, is stunning at about half the SCU of a hull D, and still having its extra modules to still be able to do more. Let's say with sensors, or perhaps with you could do some farming while you're trading. Who knows? The idea is that this ship has so many different possibilities. It puts it into so many different play styles. It's hard to pass up.
It is also the perfect base of operations for an org. And you might be going, why? Because the fact that you can have that medical bay that people can spawn in, so you could literally have the ability to allow people to come from different areas to spawn into it. And of course, that you can have a hangar under it that you can put 2 cutlasses in. They talk about the Endeavor Hope could have 2 cutlass reds in it. Just imagine that size, being able to have ships in there, and it maybe in your cargo capacity, different people's ships could be shoved in there. So that way you could be on one side of the world, do your thing, but being as you had your ship shoved in there, you can possibly spawn in there. I don't know how realistic they're going to have the med base. Again, in theory, the way they made it sound, as long as there's a med base somewhere, you can spawn there. It just adds versatility.
Well, this is it. With the med bay, you can easily use that as a hub for a large guild operation, so that people can spawn in and join in and like log off in a more remote place. This is like a center hub for a larger operation to work out from. But go back and think about the actual landing bay. That is a refueling platform. And you say, well, the Endeavor doesn't have fuel. It has fuel pods. It's like it can do refueling, it can do rearming. This can easily support lots of smaller ships in a much larger operation, much further from home. And there's very few ships out of much larger military class vessels that are capable of doing this.
Well, and last but not least with this, it's something that we were talking about a long time ago. We kind of talked about like your Battlestar Galactica exploration fleet at one point. Like, what would you want to do if you were just crazy, not out for profit, but just wanted to say, I want to go as far as I can physically go in Star Citizen and just keep going and exploring and see how good the procedural tech is. And if you were just wanting to do that, this is like a ship that would be at the core of your thing, because it would have the ability, and you'd want 2 of them. Not only do you have your med bays and you have places to hold other vessels, but you have the fact that you can supply yourself with food as well. And then you toss that in maybe with 2 of these guys, maybe a Polaris helping with some force projection, Carrick for its sensors, a whole series for the extra cargo and fuel. Like, all these ships that we mentioned are literally going to be part of this style fleet, and just throw in a Starfarer just for the pure ability to collect fuel. You, in theory, could just keep on going almost forever if you have a couple prospectors tossed in the cargo bay of this guy.
You've also got to think that this ship is not more than the sum of just its parts. It's also the sum of any smaller ship it can take with it. So at the end of the day, the gameplay and the extra features that you can put in a Cutlass or a Freelancer, you can take with you. That means ground vehicles, that means exploration, that means anything. You could use this as a bounty hunter base to, just to send off small ships and runabouts. This is any sort of gameplay style, whether it be salvage or even mining. Take prospectors with you. This ship can do it. And that's why this has got to be the single most versatile ship out of the box, and easily earns it the #1 spot.
And it is not ridiculously expensive like looking at an Idris M or even a Javelin. It is actually rather economy when compared to the other big ships that are above that. And just now throwing in some of the honorable mentions here, the 890 jump, and a lot of people are probably going to go, why did that not make the list? It's a great individual runabout ship. It does have some good shields. It does have some good firepower. It's a good ship, but it's massively overpriced for what you're getting.
It lacks the modularity of the Carrack. It also it sort of lacks the ability for that extra cargo. I mean, when you take half the cargo, that's a big deal, because the 890 jump's only really useful for very valuable cargo, as opposed to, going down and finding it's just far less versatile than a Carrack, unfortunately. It is a very nice ship, but certainly not for the price against the versatility, and probably not as many roles as a Carrack can do. It just doesn't trump the Carrack
Well, and even for
on all scouts.
the same price, just take it the same price point, you can have a Carrack and a Banu Merchantman and still have money left over.
Or a Polaris.
Or Polaris, I mean,
Polaris.
it's really hard to justify a ship when it doesn't either outshine for the cost point, or you can have other ships at that cost point. And
and the other honorable mention is the Reclaimer. The Reclaimer is, well, it is a beautiful ship. It does that one thing exceptionally well, and but the problem is it's not versatile enough. Yes, you could do cargo runs. Yes, you could possibly do exploration, but at the end of the day, it isn't quite as versatile as many of the other ships we've got on the lineup.
Well, and the thing is, the Reclaimer and also the next ship we're going to mention, which is also going to be your Orion, they're great specific industry ships. They're both in-level industry ships, but all these other ships are probably going to be used to help enhance that ship instead of the other way around. So that versatility is great, and we also have been arguing specialists are better. Yes, it's great to have that, but you're going to be using all of these other ships we mentioned to enhance your ship, which gives that extra versatility a better buy.
The problem with the Reclaimer and the Orion is that they are very one-trick ponies, and they are the best at reclamation and mining, but they're not really competitive in any other role other than their specialty. And that's why they're not on our price dash versatility dash role top 5. Though honorable mentions do go out to them because they are excellent ships if you want to focus on just those industries.
Yes. So guys, what do you think? Are we right? Are we wrong? What are your top 5 capital ships in Star Citizen?
Did we miss any ships? Is there a top 5 capital ship you think we should have put down that we didn't? And don't forget to like and subscribe. We always love hearing your opinions. We do try to read all of them and respond to all of them. And as always, catch you around.